Tunnel by the Pont d'Alma, Parisians and tourists alike came in droves. Some came simply to stare, but most came in a sort of spontaneous pilgrimage to the road where Princess Diana's car crashed and killed her.
The world woke up to sirens, shattered glass, and a single name whispered in disbelief. A princess who seemed untouchable was gone in a Paris tunnel, leaving behind grief, questions, and global shock. Behind the tiaras and fairy tale image was a woman trapped by fame, heartbreak, and relentless scrutiny. This is the haunting story of Princess Diana, a life adored by millions, and an ending that changed history forever. It is said that Princess Diana's tragedy really happened when she began her relationship with Prince Charles. She first crossed paths with Prince Charles in 1977, when she was a shy teenage aristocrat, and he was the most eligible bachelor in the world, heir to the British throne. Their early meetings were discreet, but by 1980 their relationship had captured intense public attention. Diana's youth, gentle demeanor, and old-fashioned charm seemed to fit perfectly with the image of a future queen, and the press quickly cast her as the embodiment of a modern fairy tale. When their engagement was announced in February 1981, the nation erupted in celebration, viewing the match as a romantic union destined for happiness and stability within the monarchy. On July 29, 1981, Diana married Prince Charles at St. Paul's Cathedral in London, in a ceremony watched by an estimated 750 million people worldwide. The event was immediately labeled the wedding of the century, blending royal tradition with global spectacle on an unprecedented scale. Diana's ivory silk taffeta gown, with its dramatic 25-foot train, became one of the most famous wedding dresses in history, symbolizing innocence, grandeur, and hope. Crowds lined the streets of London, waving flags and cheering as the young bride made her way into her new life under the gaze of the world. At just 20 years old, Diana became Princess of Wales overnight, stepping into a role that carried enormous expectation and pressure. Her warmth, visible nerves, and genuine smiles instantly set her apart from previous royal figures, making her deeply relatable to the public. Almost immediately, she emerged as a global icon, admired not only for her beauty and style, but for her apparent sincerity and emotional openness. To millions, Diana represented a fresh, human face of royalty, a young woman believed to be living a real-life fairy tale, destined for happiness and a lasting legacy within the British royal family. In the years immediately following her fairy tale wedding, Princess Diana was thrust into the demanding rhythm of royal life, balancing public duty with deeply personal change. Alongside Prince Charles, she embarked on extensive tours across the Commonwealth, visiting countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the Caribbean. These trips introduced her to a global audience, and her natural warmth, emotional openness, and ability to connect with people, especially children and marginalized communities, quickly set her apart. Crowds responded to her instinctively, often focusing more on Diana than on the traditional royal hierarchy, a shift that quietly reshaped public expectations of the monarchy. In June 1982, less than a year after her wedding, Diana gave birth to her first son, Prince William. Motherhood transformed her in visible ways. Determined to break from royal convention, she insisted on being closely involved in William's upbringing, choosing his schools carefully, accompanying him on overseas tours, and prioritizing hands-on parenting over distance and formality. 2 years later, in September 1984, she welcomed her second son, Prince Harry. Diana was devoted to both boys, striving to give them a sense of normalcy despite their extraordinary status, often taking them to amusement parks, fast food restaurants, and public outings rarely associated with royal children. Yet behind the public image of a young family thriving within palace walls, cracks in Diana's personal happiness were becoming increasingly difficult to conceal. The pressures of royal expectations, relentless media scrutiny, and her own emotional vulnerability took a toll. Most painful was the growing realization that her marriage lacked the intimacy and security she had hoped for. Prince Charles's ongoing emotional attachment to Camilla Parker Bowles cast a long shadow over their relationship, leaving Diana feeling isolated, inadequate, and deeply unhappy. Though she fulfilled her royal duties with composure and grace, these early years of motherhood were also marked by loneliness and emotional strain, subtle signs that the fairy tale presented to the world was already beginning to unravel. By the late 1980s, the cracks in the marriage between Prince Charles and Princess Diana had widened into fractures that could no longer be concealed. While the couple continued to appear together at official engagements, state dinners, and public ceremonies, their relationship behind closed doors had grown increasingly distant and emotionally barren. Diana, once celebrated as the embodiment of youthful hope within the monarchy, was now struggling with profound loneliness and a sense of betrayal that intensified as rumors surrounding Charles's ongoing relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles became impossible to ignore. The British tabloids played a relentless role in amplifying these tensions. Speculation about infidelity, secret phone calls, and emotional estrangement dominated headlines, turning the Princess of Wales into both a global icon and a public spectacle. Diana's vulnerability, once seen as part of her charm, was now scrutinized mercilessly. Every expression, gesture, and appearance was analyzed for signs of marital discord, leaving her under constant psychological pressure. Despite her efforts to maintain a dignified public image, the emotional strain began to surface in visible ways, including periods of withdrawal, distress, and exhaustion. As Charles and Diana drifted further apart, their marriage increasingly resembled a formal arrangement rather than a loving partnership. Separate schedules, private resentments, and unresolved conflicts became the norm. Though they shared a deep mutual commitment to their sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, this common ground was not enough to heal the growing divide between them. Attempts to project unity for the sake of the monarchy rang hollow, as insiders and the public alike sensed the absence of genuine affection. By 1992, the situation had become untenable. That year, Prime Minister John Major publicly confirmed that the Prince and Princess of Wales had decided to separate, formally acknowledging what had long been rumored. After more than a decade together, their marriage was officially declared broken, transforming a deeply personal crisis into a matter of public record. The announcement marked a turning point not only in Diana's life, but in the public's relationship with the royal family, shattering the illusion of a perfect fairy tale and exposing the human cost of life within the crown. Following the public announcement of her separation from Prince Charles in 1992, Princess Diana entered one of the most volatile and psychologically demanding periods of her life. With the collapse of the royal marriage now confirmed, the media's fixation on Diana intensified to an unprecedented degree. Paparazzi tracked her relentlessly, outside Kensington Palace, during private outings, on holidays, and even while performing charitable work. Every aspect of her appearance, friendships, and emotional state became headline material, turning her daily existence into a near-constant performance under surveillance. At the same time, the breakdown of her marriage evolved into a public battle played out through newspapers, television interviews, and carefully timed leaks. Competing narratives emerged from both camps, with stories portraying Diana alternately as a wounded, betrayed wife or as a disruptive force within the monarchy. The press coverage was often sensational, invasive, and emotionally brutal, stripping away any remaining boundary between her private pain and public identity. Diana, acutely aware of the power of media perception, found herself both victimized by the press and increasingly adept at navigating it. Officials and observers later described this era as a media war between the estranged Prince and Princess of Wales. Behind palace walls and diplomatic channels, it became clear that public opinion had become a strategic battlefield. Declassified diplomatic files from the period suggest that Diana was widely regarded as a highly skilled operator of public relations, capable of shaping her image with remarkable precision. She understood which journalists to trust, when to speak, and when silence would speak louder. Her televised interview in 1995, in which she openly discussed her marriage, mental health struggles, and feelings of betrayal, marked a defining moment in this media conflict, profoundly shifting public sympathy in her favor. Yet this apparent mastery came at a steep personal cost. Constant exposure left Diana emotionally exhausted and increasingly wary, reinforcing a sense of isolation even as she remained one of the most photographed women on Earth. The intense scrutiny of these years permanently altered her relationship with the press, the monarchy, and herself. While she emerged as a powerful voice capable of commanding global attention, the relentless media battles of the early to mid-1990s also deepened the emotional wounds left by her failed marriage, setting the stage for the final fragile chapter of her life. In January 1993, the already fragile image of the Prince and Princess of Wales suffered a devastating blow with the eruption of a scandal that became known as Tampongate, later more formally referred to as Camillagate. British tabloids published transcripts of a private and deeply intimate telephone conversation between Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, recorded years earlier but now explosively revealed to the public. The explicit nature of the exchange shocked the nation and stripped away any remaining pretense of marital fidelity or emotional discretion within the royal household. The scandal was profoundly damaging to Prince Charles's reputation. As heir to the throne, he was expected to embody moral restraint and personal dignity. Instead, the leaked conversation portrayed him as emotionally dependent on Camilla and openly dismissive of boundaries that should have protected his marriage. Public reaction was swift and unforgiving. Newspapers, commentators, and ordinary citizens alike expressed outrage and embarrassment, not only at the content of the call, but at what it symbolized. A long-suspected betrayal confirmed in humiliating detail. For the monarchy, already weakened by internal fractures, Tampongate represented a catastrophic loss of credibility. The revelation intensified media scrutiny of royal infidelity and cemented the perception that Charles had never truly disengaged from Camilla, even after marrying Diana. While rumors of his emotional attachment had circulated for years, the scandal provided undeniable proof, leaving little room for denial or reinterpretation. The royal household appeared powerless to contain the fallout, as each new headline deepened public disillusionment and exposed the private failures of a family built on public symbolism. For Diana, the impact was complex and deeply personal. Though the scandal reopened old wounds, it also fundamentally shifted public sympathy in her favor. She emerged in the public imagination as the wounded yet dignified spouse, betrayed, isolated, and emotionally neglected, yet enduring with visible strength. The contrast between Diana's vulnerability and Charles's exposed intimacy with Camilla was stark, reinforcing her status as an emblem of resilience amid betrayal. Tampongate did not merely confirm the collapse of a marriage, it irrevocably altered the moral narrative surrounding Britain's future king and elevated Diana as the emotional center of a royal tragedy playing out before the world. On November 20th, 1995, Princess Diana irrevocably changed her relationship with the monarchy and the media through her televised interview on BBC Panorama with journalist Martin Bashir. Watched by an estimated 23 million viewers in the United Kingdom alone, the broadcast marked a stunning break from royal convention, shattering decades of carefully guarded silence around private suffering within the House of Windsor. Calm, composed, and strikingly candid, Diana spoke in her own voice, presenting a deeply personal account of a life lived under extraordinary pressure. During the interview, Diana addressed her long-rumored struggles with bulimia, describing how emotional distress and isolation had fueled her eating disorder. She spoke openly about her sense of inadequacy within the royal system, her recurring battles with depression, and the profound loneliness she felt even at the height of public adoration. Most memorably, she confirmed Prince Charles's affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, delivering the now iconic line that, "There were three of us in this marriage. a statement that resonated globally and crystallized public understanding of the marriage's collapse. The interview reframed Diana not as a distant royal figure, but as a wounded, articulate woman seeking honesty and agency. Public sympathy surged, while the monarchy appeared rigid, emotionally detached, and out of step with modern expectations. For many viewers, Diana's willingness to expose her vulnerabilities represented courage and authenticity. For the royal establishment, it was a seismic breach that undermined the traditional code of discretion. The fallout was immediate and profound, accelerating the path toward formal divorce and permanently altering the public image of the royal family. Yet the legacy of the Panorama interview darkened in later years. It emerged that Bashir had employed deceitful tactics to gain Diana's trust, including the use of forged documents falsely suggesting surveillance and betrayal by those close to her. Subsequent investigations confirmed these unethical methods, revealing that Diana's fears and suspicions had been deliberately manipulated. This revelation cast a tragic shadow over the interview's impact, deepening the sense that Diana had been exploited during a period of intense vulnerability. While the interview remains one of the most influential broadcasts in British television history, it also stands as a stark reminder of the costs of media intrusion. Diana's decision to speak out empowered millions and reshaped public discourse around mental health and marital breakdown. But the circumstances under which her voice was obtained ultimately reinforced her growing mistrust of institutions meant to protect her: press, palace, and power alike. After years of emotional turmoil, relentless media scrutiny, and an increasingly public marital breakdown, Princess Diana and Prince Charles formally ended their marriage on August 28, 1996. The divorce brought legal closure to a relationship that had long ceased to function in private or public, marking the final chapter of a union that once symbolized modern hope for the British monarchy. Though the separation had been widely anticipated, its finalization carried deep emotional weight, signaling an irreversible rupture between Diana and the royal institution that had defined her adult life. As part of the settlement, Diana relinquished the style of Her Royal Highness, a symbolic loss that underscored her changed status within the royal hierarchy. While she retained the title Princess of Wales, the removal of her HRH designation altered her security arrangements and formal standing, leaving her both more independent and more vulnerable. For the first time since her early 20s, Diana was no longer bound by the rigid protocols of royal duty, yet she was also navigating an uncertain identity outside the structure that had once governed every aspect of her existence. Despite this profound transition, Diana's priorities remained clear. Her devotion to her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, was unwavering. She worked to maintain stability in their lives, ensuring that they continued to experience warmth, openness, and emotional honesty amid the upheaval of their parents' separation. Diana was determined that the boys understand compassion, empathy, and responsibility, values she believed were essential to shaping their future roles within the monarchy. Freed from official royal obligations, Diana expanded her humanitarian work with renewed focus and visibility. She became increasingly involved in causes related to landmine eradication, homelessness, HIV/AIDS awareness, and the welfare of marginalized communities. Her willingness to physically engage with those suffering, holding hands, listening intently, and challenging social stigmas, set her apart from traditional royal charity work and enhanced her global influence. Though divorced and no longer a working royal, Diana's presence on the world stage remained powerful, rooted not in title but in human connection. The divorce represented both liberation and loss. While Diana gained personal autonomy and the freedom to shape her own path, she also faced heightened exposure without the full protection of the royal system. This delicate balance defined her final year, as she moved forward with resilience and purpose, redefining herself not as a princess of protocol, but as a woman determined to make her own mark on the world. In the months following her divorce from Prince Charles, Princess Diana entered a new and defining phase of her life. one marked by greater personal freedom, intensified humanitarian commitment, and unrelenting public attention. No longer constrained by official royal duties, Diana deliberately redirected her energy toward causes that reflected her deepest convictions. She sought out the world's most vulnerable communities, determined to use her global visibility to draw attention to suffering that was often ignored or politically inconvenient. During this period, Diana became especially active in advocating for AIDS awareness, at a time when fear and stigma still surrounded the disease. Her willingness to physically touch and comfort AIDS patients sent a powerful message of compassion and humanity, challenging widespread misconceptions. She also emerged as a leading international voice against the use of landmines, visiting former war zones such as Angola and Bosnia. Walking through active minefields in protective gear, Diana provided haunting visual evidence of the long-term human cost of war, transforming abstract policy debates into urgent moral issues. Yet even as her humanitarian work deepened, Diana's relationship with the media remained complicated and often adversarial. Paparazzi followed her relentlessly, documenting her movements, relationships, and emotional state with obsessive intensity. While some coverage portrayed her as a courageous humanitarian and global icon, other reporting was invasive, speculative, and at times cruel. Diana attempted to set boundaries, but complete escape from media attention proved impossible. The same press that amplified her charitable efforts also intruded into her private life, blurring the line between advocacy and exploitation. Despite distancing herself from the royal household, Diana could not escape the public narrative surrounding her identity as the former Princess of Wales. Every appearance, friendship, and personal decision was filtered through competing lenses of admiration and criticism. Supporters viewed her as a liberated woman forging a new path. Detractors questioned her motives and stability. This duality shaped how she was perceived in her final year, reinforcing her status as one of the most scrutinized figures on Earth. In the early hours of 31st August 1997, the world was stunned by news that Princess Diana had been fatally injured in a car crash in Paris. At just 36 years old, her life was abruptly cut short inside the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, ending a story that had unfolded for nearly 2 decades under relentless global attention. Diana had been traveling in a Mercedes-Benz shortly after midnight, following an evening at the Hotel Ritz, where she had been staying with her companion, Dodi Fayed. The car was driven by Henri Paul, the hotel's acting head of security, with Diana seated in the rear alongside Dodi Fayed. Their bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, occupied the front passenger seat. As the vehicle left the hotel, it was pursued by paparazzi on motorcycles and in cars, prompting the driver to accelerate in an apparent attempt to evade photographers. Moments later, the vehicle entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel at high speed and violently crashed into a concrete pillar. The impact proved catastrophic. Dodi Fayed and Henri Paul were pronounced dead at the scene, while Diana, critically injured, was rushed to the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital. Despite extensive medical efforts, she succumbed to her injuries several hours later, the result of massive internal bleeding and trauma. Trevor Rees-Jones survived the crash, but sustained serious injuries and later reported having little memory of the moments leading up to the collision. Subsequent investigations by French authorities concluded that Henri Paul was significantly impaired at the time of the crash, with toxicology reports revealing high levels of alcohol in his blood, as well as the presence of prescription medications. The official findings determined that his intoxication, combined with excessive speed, was the primary cause of the accident. However, investigators also acknowledged that the aggressive pursuit by paparazzi contributed to the circumstances that led to the fatal loss of control. Diana's death triggered an unprecedented outpouring of global grief. Millions mourned not only a princess, but a woman whose life had come to symbolize compassion, vulnerability, and the human cost of fame. The crash in Paris became a defining moment in modern history, intensifying debates about media ethics, privacy, and the pressures placed on public figures. Though investigations sought to establish factual accountability, the emotional impact of Diana's death transcended legal conclusions, cementing her legacy as a tragic figure whose life and death reflected the profound consequences of life lived in the unyielding glare of the spotlight. The news of Princess Diana's death on 31st August 1997 sent shockwaves across the globe with a force rarely witnessed in modern history. Within hours of confirmation from Paris, the tragedy dominated television broadcasts, radio bulletins, and newspaper front pages on every continent. What began as breaking news quickly evolved into a worldwide moment of collective mourning, as millions struggled to comprehend how one of the most recognizable women on Earth could be gone so suddenly at just 36 years old. Newspapers responded with unprecedented intensity. Front pages were stripped of routine reporting and replaced entirely with images of Diana, the wrecked tunnel in Paris, and headlines conveying disbelief and sorrow. Publications such as the Los Angeles Times, the Mail, and the Sunday Mirror devoted extensive coverage to the crash, the frantic rescue efforts, and the unanswered questions surrounding her final hours. The tone ranged from somber reflection to dramatic urgency, underscoring both the emotional weight of the loss and the insatiable public demand for information. Special editions sold out within minutes, while presses ran around the clock to meet demand. Television networks abandoned scheduled programming to provide continuous live coverage. Reporters stood outside Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, and the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, narrating scenes of grief as they unfolded in real time. Candlelight vigils, tearful crowds, and mountains of flowers became central visual symbols of the moment. Viewers watched as strangers embraced, openly wept, and shared personal stories of how Diana had touched their lives, transforming private grief into a shared global experience. The media frenzy reflected not only the scale of Diana's fame, but the emotional connection she had forged with the public. Unlike previous royal deaths, this tragedy felt immediate and deeply personal to millions who believed they understood her struggles, compassion, and humanity. Yet the intensity of the coverage also reignited debate about the role of the press in her life and death. As cameras documented the world's sorrow, critics questioned whether the same media machine now expressing grief had contributed to the pressures that defined her final years. On the 6th of September 1997, the world came to a collective standstill as Princess Diana was laid to rest in a ceremony that transcended national borders and royal tradition. The funeral, held at Westminster Abbey in London, became one of the most watched events in television history, with an estimated 2.5 billion people tuning in from across the globe. Streets fell silent, workplaces paused, and families gathered around television screens, united by grief for a woman whose life had unfolded so publicly and ended so tragically. In the days leading up to the service, London became a focal point of mourning. An overwhelming tide of grief swept through the city as more than 1 million floral tributes were laid outside Kensington Palace, Diana's former home. Bouquets, handwritten notes, photographs, and children's toys formed vast, colorful memorials stretching for miles, releasing a powerful fragrance that lingered in the late summer air. The scale of the public response reflected not protocol, but emotion, an outpouring of affection that revealed how deeply Diana had resonated with ordinary people. The funeral procession itself was profoundly symbolic. Diana's coffin, draped with the royal standard and topped with white lilies, was accompanied by her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, walking solemnly behind it alongside Prince Charles, Prince Philip, and Diana's brother, Earl Spencer. The image of the two young princes publicly mourning their mother became one of the most enduring and heartbreaking moments in modern royal history. Bells tolled across London as crowds lined the route in respectful silence, many openly weeping. Inside Westminster Abbey, the service was marked by solemn dignity rather than royal grandeur. International dignitaries, heads of state, and representatives from charitable organizations filled the pews, reflecting Diana's global reach. Music, readings, and prayers emphasized compassion, humility, and service, values closely associated with Diana's life. Earl Spencer's eulogy, candid and emotionally charged, resonated powerfully, praising Diana's warmth while criticizing the pressures that had surrounded her. The funeral was more than a farewell. It was a defining cultural moment. The unprecedented viewership underscored Diana's unique status as a global figure whose influence extended far beyond monarchy or celebrity. On that September day, the world did not merely observe a royal funeral, it participated in a shared expression of grief, remembrance, and reflection, sealing Diana's place in history as a princess of the people whose legacy would endure long after the final hymn faded from Westminster Abbey. In the years following Princess Diana's death, grief gradually gave way to suspicion, speculation, and a flood of conspiracy theories that refused to fade from public consciousness. Despite early French investigations concluding that the crash was a tragic accident, doubts persisted, fueled by Diana's immense global profile, her strained relationship with royal institutions, and the unresolved anger many felt toward the paparazzi culture surrounding her final moments. Claims ranging from intelligence service involvement to deliberate assassination circulated widely, keeping the circumstances of her death under constant scrutiny. In response to mounting public pressure, British authorities launched Operation Paget in 2004, one of the most extensive and expensive inquiries in modern British legal history. Led by former Metropolitan Police Commissioner Lord Stevens, the investigation examined allegations of cover-ups, institutional failures, and supposed plots involving British intelligence agencies, the royal family, and foreign actors. Over several years, investigators reviewed thousands of documents, interviewed hundreds of witnesses across multiple countries, and analyzed forensic, medical, and intelligence evidence in extraordinary detail. The findings of Operation Paget were unequivocal. Published in 2006, the final report rejected all claims of assassination or deliberate foul play, concluding that there was no evidence Diana was murdered or that any state or intelligence agency played a role in her death. The inquiry confirmed earlier French conclusions that the crash resulted from a combination of excessive speed, driver impairment, and the presence of pursuing paparazzi, rather than any coordinated conspiracy. The legal process culminated in 2008, with a British inquest jury delivering a verdict of unlawful killing. This ruling determined that Diana, Dodi Fayed, and driver Henry Paul died as a result of gross negligence, primarily due to Paul's impaired condition and the reckless behavior of paparazzi who pursued the vehicle. Importantly, the verdict acknowledged shared responsibility rather than intentional harm, underscoring the cumulative failures that led to the fatal crash, rather than a premeditated act. While the verdict satisfied many seeking accountability, it did not entirely silence public debate. For some, the idea that such a high-profile figure could die through a chain of human errors remained difficult to accept. Yet both French and British authorities consistently and firmly dismissed theories of assassination, reaffirming that the tragedy stemmed from negligence, pressure, and circumstance rather than conspiracy. What do you think about Princess Diana? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.